Over-tourism, sustainable tourism, part 2, tourism impacts and challenges for sustainability. Hello, over-tourism and sustainable tourism, part 1, too much tourism. The world is experiencing exponential growth in tourism numbers. We'll see here from the UNWTO tourism tomorrow. We can see that the growth in tourism has been quite phenomenal over the last 10 to 20 years. This means that in 2017 we reached 1.323 million international tourism arrivals. That was up 84 million from the previous year, and over 8 years we've seen a 4% year-on-year growth in tourism numbers, which is creating huge pressures on tourism destinations, countries, and of course their environments. Here we can see sort of international tourist arrival figures for 2017, and you can see that across the world that tourism is on the increase, 8% up in Europe, 3% up in North America and South America, 9% up in Africa, 4% up in the Middle East, and about 6% up in Asia and Oceania. So across the world we're seeing growing numbers of tourists internationally, growing every year on an annual basis. And of course this is causing what we term now over-tourism, too much tourism at many destinations. This is a chart here just to show the tourism density index of over-tourism v under-tourism across the world, and we can see there in red some of the tourism hotspots of the world, and these are particularly concentrated and focused in Europe, places like Spain, France, the Czech Republic, Croatia, Iceland, Greece, Cyprus, etc. And of course, because of this, we're seeing huge pressures on our cities and our tourism destinations in general. This is Prague in the Czech Republic, of cruise ships in Venice. The sheer scale of some of these operations now really overweigh on the actual natural and heritage and cultural environments of some of these places. It's Koh Phi Phi Island in Thailand, so this is just not focused on Europe, but it's across the world. Machu Picchu, the Trevi Fountain in Rome. And of course, Rome is now trying to manage that by holding back some of these sheer numbers of tourists, and it's actually trying to control numbers in this respect. And of course, this is causing a lot of disquiet and anger from local residents, local communities in many of these cities and many of these other destinations. This isn't tourism, this is an invasion. This is in Barcelona. We're seeing demonstrations now in many cities against the onslaught of over-tourism. Of course, the Spanish costas in this respect were one of the first examples of mass tourism, and of course too many tourists, creating a whole range of environmental, social and economic pressures. This is just another example in Asia. The Rialto Bridge in Venice, Las Ramblas in Barcelona in Spain, one of the current hotspots. Times Square in New York. This is an actual event, but even so, events now are actually creating a lot of pressure on city environments, particularly the hosting of particular cultural events. A public holiday in China, Great Wall of China, just outside Beijing. And even smaller places, Santorini, for example, and the need for lots of tourists to get their selfie with the sunset. This is now generating a whole range of new pressures, and of course it's starting to destroy the actual ambience of the place because of that. And of course the cruise ships as well are contributing to those pressures and those tourism numbers. This is Croatia, Dubrovnik again, under huge pressure because of the limited space in some of these historic centres, and even in remoter parts of the world. The foothills of the Himalayas, the path up to the base camp of Mount Everest, again, under pressure environmentally from too many people trying to see these places. And smaller places that weren't on the tourist map until about 10 years ago, places like Iceland, are now seeing an exponential growth of tourism numbers. Here we can see just a chart showing the rise in the number of tourists against the existing population, and we've got people saying, local residents saying, we don't have any neighbours, say a Reykjavik resident. Last year, 1.7 million people visited Iceland, more than triple the number that came in 2010. So again, this huge growth due to popularity, and I get stimulated by low-cost airlines, better mobility, cheaper airfares, etc. And of course, this is just some other things. Tourism, go home. Tourism kills cities. So across the board now, we're seeing some problems being created by too many tourists visiting certain sites and certain destinations. Tourism, you are the terrorists, tourism, go home. And of course, we're seeing it in the local press now as well. Bucket lists are killing the places we love. Travel should be about human contact, not the joyless tick box and selfie stick mentality of the world's tourism hotspots. So we're all at fault to some extent by wanting our photos done in many of these places, but it is creating lots of problems. How over-tourism is ruining the world's most popular holiday destinations. Record numbers of tourists are flocking to see the world's top sites. This is all headline news now. This is from local press over the last sort of 4 or 5 months. Cities buckling under the weight of backpackers. The infrastructure in Ho Chi Minh City is struggling to keep up with the influx. And then insensitive tourists as well. Selfie tourists get up Easter Island's noses, causing all sorts of problems with insensitive behaviour at some of these cultural spots. So the impact is becoming quite pronounced. Tourism, the Dutch Tourist Board tries to keep tourists away, not promoting Amsterdam in particular. So these are some of the extreme remedies that are being actually mooted by some tourism boards. Where not to go in 2020. It was advertised recently, a short video which you have access to there if you download that particular website. So, generally speaking, over-tourism and the exponential growth in tourism numbers over the last decade is creating problems for a variety of tourism destinations. And these problems are really manifested in tourism impacts. And these impacts relate primarily to environmental, physical or ecological impacts, which we've seen in some of these historic centres and some of these destinations, social, cultural and community impacts, and of course economic impacts associated with cost, finance, GDP and jobs. Some of these are positive, some of these are negative, but by and large over-tourism is creating lots of pressures and lots of challenges and lots of issues now at tourism destinations. So that is the first video. We'll go and look at the challenges of creating more sustainable approaches to tourism in the second video. Thank you.